The film begins with a scene from 1944. We see a major war going on. The Nazi army was taking a man with them. His face was covered with a cloth, and the man's friend just kept staring at him. He thinks, "Where is this army taking my friend?" When the cloth is removed from the man's face, it reveals that he is Indiana Jones. Actually, the Nazis stole a lot of antiques here after the war. They discovered things that are unique to that location. Indiana had also come here in search of a unique knife. Now, a Nazi's friend named Waller notices him and places him in his bag. There was a powerful explosion at the time, and Indiana managed to escape and leave. He sat in a car. Two Nazi soldiers also arrive and sit in the same car. He thought his driver was sitting in front of him. That's why Indiana says nothing and continues driving. However, halfway through, the Nazi army realized that Indiana was fleeing them. When they found out, Indiana had jumped out of the moving vehicle. And while killing some soldiers, he boards a train. In that train, all of the Nazi soldiers were taking antiques from this location. He reaches for the train box containing the precious knife. However, upon closer examination, he discovers that it is not genuine, but rather a forgery. This was already known by the Nazi comrade Waller. That's why he intentionally left it there. Waller had a very expensive machine here, built by a scientist. As a result, he was also able to travel in time. Indiana's friend, whom he had caught, now gives all of these things to Waller. There, Indiana acquired a large number of antique and valuable items. Then he emerges from there and sits in another box so that no Nazi soldier recognizes him. Indiana also looks at his friend, who is tied to a chair. He disposes of him and takes him with him. In the next box, Indiana meets Waller, who is carrying a device. He punches him and takes the device, which is capable of time travel. Then they both rush onto this train because they could be caught in it. However, the Nazis were determined to apprehend them regardless. That is why they detonate a bomb in front of the train. When Indiana saw this, he went into the canal with a friend. This is why they were both saved. They now realized that the Nazis did not drop the bomb on the train. Actually, this was the work of Americans. They now also possessed the time travel device. That is, Indiana could not obtain that device. The story now takes place in 1969. In 1969, Indiana Jones had grown up. We are shown his college, where he was a professor who used to lecture on historical topics. He asks a question to all of his students. All of the students give the incorrect answer to his question. There was a girl named Helena who answered all of Indiana's questions correctly. Hearing this made him very happy. He gives everyone the name of a scientist here. He claims to have created various weapons and devices, including time travel capabilities. Anyway, Indiana is now leaving the college. Helena was also behind them. Behind Helena, a CIA agent, there are many goons in a hotel. There was also a US agent among them. There is also a Waller, whom we saw at the start of the story, who wishes to steal antiques. This American agent used to work for Waller. Actually, Waller concealed the fact that he is a Nazi. He used to work here for NASA. The scene shifts to Helena and Indiana. Helena informs Indiana that I am studying archaeology. That is, I enjoy learning about various aspects of history. I've read a lot about various topics. She discusses the same device here, which was a time travel device. Helena says I now need to find that device, that dial. Indiana is slightly disappointed after hearing this. They now accompany Helena to the library of the same college where they used to study. They take out their device and present it to Helena, because up until now, Indiana had kept it safe with them. This represents half of it. That scientist broke half of it when he created it, because the scientists understood that it could also be used for bad purposes. And sometimes it ends up in the wrong hands. Then some people arrive who were CIA agents. They also had the CIA agent we saw following Helena. They discover that Indiana has a time travel device. They shoot at them. Helena then ran away with the device. Indiana is apprehended and placed in a van. She is then asked, "Where is that device?" Then her van comes to a stop ahead. There was a lot of rushing ahead. Because today, Neil Armstrong was about to take his first steps on the moon. That is why his van has stopped. They all decide to travel to Indiana on foot. But Indiana deceived them and fled from here. They mount a horse from here. Then they arrived, sat on the train, and left from here. They eventually meet their friend, because she had visited her friend. Her friends inform her that Helena is a thief. She steals antiques and rare items and sells them at the market. She has also spent a lot of time in jail. After hearing all of this, Indiana says I'll have to find her, because she owns an expensive dial device. Indiana's friends are now making all of the arrangements for her. They also had a fake passport made for her. Indiana's friends hand her their cap. That was very old. They say I remember every adventure I had with you. When Indiana arrived at a hotel the next day to look for her, Helena was auctioning off that dial. When they attempt to stop her, Helena's assistant stops them, which was also her friend. They move forward, waving their hands. At the same time, Indiana sees Waller. He recognized her as a Nazi, because he could remember everything. He looks at her and says, "Helena, you cannot auction this dial." Then a fight starts here. Everyone was behind that device. Finally, Helena receives the device. She tosses it towards her assistant. Then Waller removes the device from her grasp and takes it away. Helena and Indiana both run. However, Waller had already moved on. Indiana takes an auto rickshaw and follows them. But they had left. Waller is shown. I'm not sure how many innocent people died as a result of what the CIA agent was saying to you. That is, behind Indiana. The CIA agents who lied were all with Waller. Waller kills the agent and says I'm a Nazi. I was and always will be a Nazi. That is, until now, he lived here while concealing his true identity. On the other side, Indiana visits a friend who owns a ship, who is a sailor. He tells him, "Look, I need to go into the sea. I need your help with this." Helena and her assistant were with him. Helena asks Indiana, if you could go back in time, what would you do first? He says that if given the chance, he will first save his son, who died in an accident. After saying this, he leaves, sad. The next day, he begins his journey across the sea. He had to find the Nazi ship, which had drowned and been destroyed. There were many coffins lying there, belonging to those who had drowned and died aboard the ship. Then a whalefish approaches them. Indiana drives him away from there. He discovered a box in that ship and began to ascend. The whalers had captured Indiana's ship. When they find that box, they take it. There was a large stone on which something strange was written. Now he tells Helena to fall on the stone. Because she was an archaeologist, she performs her trick by telling her everything is wrong, resulting in a bomb blast. And now, taking advantage of this, Indiana, Helena, and her assistant travel to another ship. Indiana had also taken the stone with him. When he notices the stone is very heavy, he sets it on fire. He reasoned that perhaps there was something inside it. When he sets fire to it, a gold shield emerges with a written message indicating the location of the remaining dial. He also learns about the location where that scientist was buried, the person who created the time machine, and the other part could be found there. Now the three of them travel to the same location where Helena's assistant was apprehended. Indiana was concerned about her. He also tries to follow them but fails to catch them. On the way, Helena informs Indiana that my assistant is extremely intelligent. You do not worry about him. He understands how to get out of trouble. Now, when these two arrived at the cave, the boiler men were already present. Cereal gas was left in the cave. Indiana gets a little ahead. Moving forward, they find themselves in a flowing river in the cave, which they cross via the bridge. They were followed by boiler men. Indiana and Helena proceed to see the scientist's cemetery. When they removed the stone, they discovered his entire skeleton. There, they discovered the other component of the same device, which made Indiana very happy. Helena examines the photographs taken there, which are contemporary in nature. There were pictures of an airplane and a clock there, which surprised her greatly, because she wondered how anyone could have known about these things at the time. She also examines the clock made on the same scientist's skeleton, which depicted the coming time. She looks at it and says, "This is quite surprising. They have tied the clock, but this technology has yet to arrive." Helena understands that the scientists are messing with time. They understand time travel. Then Indiana hears this and confirms that everything is true. Then the boiler appears, proving that the scientist was never wrong. Time travel is possible. Now he takes the other half of the device from them. At the same time, the scientist who attached the clock to his hand keeps it on the device. So it began working. Helena's assistant is also brought here, and he attacks the boiler. That's when the bullets started flying there. Indiana suffered injuries as well. He tells Helena, "Look, go, your life may be in danger." Helena and the assistant are now leaving. The boiler and his men carry Indiana with them. They were all moving to the airport. On the way, the boiler informs Indiana that I have discovered a location where I can travel in time. Now I also have a device. I'm not afraid of anything. Helena, on the other hand, was following him along with her assistant. She was secretly watching him. She shows her assistant a plane. She says, "Look at it. Will you drive it?" He says yes, so I will try. Helena now gets on the boiler's plane using a bike. His assistant was also returning with the plane. The boiler had discovered a place where he could travel in time. We see a bright light in the sky, and the ship moves into it. Helena's assistant's plane was also delayed, that is, they all traveled in time and returned in time. Their plane went out of control because there was a war going on. When they left, there was devastation everywhere. Helena tries to stop the plane, but it is out of control. That is why Helena hangs from the plane. Indiana comes and saves him. But just then they both fell down. So his parachute opens, and both are saved. We also see the scientists who created this time travel machine. They were still sitting and finishing it. That is, this time was past. At the time the time travel machine was not created. They can now see that the plane which had a boiler is also falling. That plane had completely crashed and been destroyed. The scientists arrive and take the clock from the boiler's hand which they had tied up. That is what we saw today on the tailor's hand. Indiana informs Helena here. All of this was planned by the scientist. He had programmed his dial so that if anyone used it again, they would arrive at the same location where he had previously stayed. And here's what happened. I want to stay here forever. I simply want to spend the rest of my life here. That's when the scientists approach him. They pass the clock and dial to Indiana. They tell him to take it at his leisure. Indiana says, "No, I don't want to leave here right now." That's when Helena speaks. "You have arrived here via time travel. If you stay here, we may encounter problems. That's why you've got to join me." That is when she delivers a hard punch to Indiana's face, knocking him unconscious. When he came to, he was in his own world. That is, in his time. Present. He still had the same clock and time travel machine that he had used 2,000 years ago. That's where Helena appears and speaks. "I know you're alone." That's when she calls her wife, who had previously abandoned her. They were all extremely happy. This concludes the film's story. Thanks for watching, and be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more movie stories.